Environmental Council. We're going to start in just a moment or two. If people can sign in if they want to speak tonight, and then we'll get started. So my name is Cy Gruza. I'm the environmental attorney for PSEG Long Island, and I want to welcome you to tonight's public hearing. As I'm sure you're all aware, LIPA has proposed to install a 69 kV underground transmission line between the Buell and Bridgehampton substations. And PSEG Long Island, as agent for LIPA, has prepared a draft environmental impact statement that's available online that you can review. The public hearing tonight is an opportunity for you to provide us with your comments on the proposed action and on the DEIS. We have a court reporter with us. She'll be creating a transcript for us. We'll have a record of all of your comments. We will provide a written response to all of the comments as part of the final environmental impact statement that we'll be preparing after this hearing over the next couple of months. This is not the end of the public comment period. The public comment period is actually going to run through July 12th. So if you think of other statements or comments or questions that you want to have answered in the final environmental impact statement, you could submit them up to July 12th, and we'll treat them the same way we would treat any of the comments that are made here tonight. We're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes per person in order to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. We're going to call people to make their comments in the order that they're listed on the sign-up sheet. If you haven't signed up to make a comment and you want to, the sign-up sheet is over by the table to my left. Also, we probably have people participating virtually, and at the end of the comments from the people who are here in the room, we'll have the people who are virtually participating will have an opportunity to make their comments also. All right, I'd like to hand this over now to my colleague, Lara Erbat, who'll give a brief overview of the project.
Thank you, Sai. I apologize. Bill, does he have there's a presentation that was supposed to be up on the screen for everybody to see. Sure. Apologies, we're just waiting to get the presentation loaded up. Just bear with us 1 second. Okay.
You want a hard copy?
Okay, I don't have a hard copy.
You want a
I
hard
can do it
copy?
on my phone. Yeah. I'll grab one. Bear with us, apologies. There's always technical difficulties.
You're making me look good.
Thank you.
Just use this version, it's not the right one.
That's okay. Yep. Okay. So good evening, everybody. I just want to give you a brief overview of the project and what you'll be commenting on this evening, particularly if you didn't have the opportunity to walk around during our public information session and view the boards that we've prepared. So just a little bit of background on the project. PSEG Long Island, as agent for LIPA, the Long Island Power Authority, is responsible to ensure that we provide safe and reliable electricity to our customers. The South Fork load has been growing. Any better? Yes. There we go, okay. The South Fork load has been growing steadily over the past number of years, and we've identified the need to be able to provide additional power to the South Fork. So that's the impetus for this project. The project goes between our Bridgehampton substation and our Buell substation, and is about 5.2 miles in length. We're going to be using two construction methodologies to install the project. So horizontal directional drill, and that's going to be utilized beneath the Long Pond Greenbelt, and also for a portion of the project that is beneath the Long Island Railroad tracks close to our Buell substation. The remainder of the project will be installed via open trench. So due to the potential for significant environmental impacts associated with the eastern tiger salamander, LIPA issued a positive declaration on this project. That positive declaration triggered the draft environmental impact statement, which was prepared and accepted by LIPA on May 18th. The draft environmental impact statement analyzed a variety of both natural and human resources that includes both soils, topography, water resources, ecology, noise, traffic impacts, cultural resources, and impacts to the coastal zone. It also analyzed 5 alternatives, which are available on the boards in the back if you'd like to look at those in more detail. In terms of some of the more important points of the project, we have designed mitigation for any impacts to the eastern tiger salamander. That includes revegetation and restoration of suboptimal habitat for that species. And we have also designed construction methodology to minimize disturbance in the area. So again, just to reiterate what Sai had discussed, this is just one step in the process. What we are here to do tonight is to receive your comments. Those comments are going to be recorded, and then we will address them in the final environmental impact statement. The The comment period is open till July 12th, and we do have a variety of ways that you can submit comments. So you can submit them this evening via email or via mail, and the way you can submit them is provided on the fact sheets that are available on the roundtable. So at this point, I think we would like to invite our first commenter up to provide their comments.
And so when you're called to offer your comments, you can make them from the podium. There's a microphone there.
I'm going to get close because it sounds like you need to with the microphone. So thank you very much. And it's an important project we're here talking about tonight. My name is Fred Thiel. I'm the New York State Assemblyman for the 1st Assembly District, which includes all of the town of East Hampton, all of the town of Southampton, the town of Shelter Island, and Eastern Brookhaven. All of this project is included within my Assembly District. And I'm going to use my 3 minutes to kind of summarize my basic feelings about this. I will be submitting more detailed written comments to you. And let me just say at the outset that when it comes to the Long Pond Greenbelt, I'm protective of this. I'm protective of this resource because it is a critical area of open space within my assembly district that I take very seriously, but it's also extremely personal to me. I live in Sag Harbor. I grew up in the Long Pond Greenbelt. My introduction to nature really came from walking in the Long Pond Greenbelt with my father. I recognize what an important recreational and ecological resource it is because I live it and I continue to live it every single day. But in my role as an elected official, I'm also mindful of the fact that between the state of New York, the county of Suffolk, the town of Southampton, the Nature Conservancy, the Peconic Land Trust, literally tens of millions of dollars have been spent in public money to protect the resource that is the Long Pond Greenbelt, which is a chain of coastal ponds that runs all the way from Sag Harbor all the way to the ocean in Sagaponack. And it is a critical resource. It is not just the eastern tiger salamander. I know that that might have triggered in your mind the need for an environmental impact statement, but this resource is so much more. It has species of global significance. It is an area that lends itself to just not the appreciation of nature, but recreation. It is one of a kind, and it can't be replaced. And that is why in my comments with regard to this particular project, that the secret process, to me, you got 213 pages there. There's a whole encyclopedia of information about the area. But the critical part of any environmental impact statement is the mitigative measures and the alternatives. And in my statements about this project, because of the critical nature of the Long Pond Greenbelt, this alternative should be the alternative of last resort. And we should be looking at ways to avoid any impacts here in the Long Pond Greenbelt. And I hope that this secret process is a very interactive process between PSE&G and LIPA and the community. I've seen a lot of times with the secret process where you do the draft, we have a hearing, we make comments, you respond to the comments, there's a final environmental impact statement, and a decision is made. I invite you, and I know County Legislator Bridget Fleming feels the same way, and she'll speak for herself, but we want to engage in a continuing process with you. As you said, we're at the draft environmental impact statement process. We want you to come back and work with us and work with the community to look at all the options, all the alternatives, all of the mitigative measures that may be available here, and to see if we can find some consensus as to how to proceed with with LIPA and PSE&G meeting its responsibility to provide electricity to people here on the South Fork. So, you know, I've read the environmental impact statement. I think there's more to be done as far as, certainly as I've said, with regard to mitigative measures. You know, I've looked at the alternatives that you've presented. I will acknowledge that all of these alternatives have issues. But we need to work together, and this needs to be a collaborative process to reach a solution that protects everything that is special about the Long Pond Greenbelt. Too much work, too much effort by people in this room that volunteer their time, that work literally day and night and have done so for decades, first to see the land preserved, then to see it properly managed so that the public can enjoy it. We can't have a project come in that destroys those efforts that have been made for so many, many years. So I invite you to work with the community, to work with the elected officials that represent the community, to look at alternatives and solutions, and I think you'll hear some tonight, some other options and some other suggestions, so that when we get to the final environmental impact statement process, and when it gets to the decision-making time for a project like this, we have all worked together and we have gotten what is not just the best result for PSE&G and its stockholders, but what is the best result for the community here on the East End and on the South Fork. Thank you.
Jumped again, sorry. Thank you, Fred, for your continued leadership and for all you've done to preserve open space here on Long Island. I'm legislator Bridget Fleming. I serve this district in the Suffolk County Legislature. Beginning in 1968, through a chain of land acquisition, Suffolk County, the Nature Conservancy, and the town of Southampton have preserved and protected over 600 acres of land that stretches from Otter Pond in Sag Harbor to Sagaponack Pond in Sagaponack, known as the Long Pond Greenbelt. And I would reiterate and echo what my colleague Fred Thiel says, it is not only about the tiger salamander. The Long Pond Greenbelt is a unique expanse of interconnected coastal plain ponds, freshwater swamps, wetlands, fields, and woodlands, supporting one of the highest concentrations of rare species and natural communities anywhere in New York State. I'm sure you're going to hear one of the great things about representing this community is we have an abundance of very smart, committed scientists and environmentalists. I'm sure you will hear from them with regard to the alternatives and the specific impacts to the aquifer, to open space, to wildlife habitat, and to the protected species. But I will say that looking at the alternatives in the EIS, I will agree that there are no good alternatives to this project. And I'm sure you're going to hear from others on that. So I want to confine my comments just so that the record is complete on one particular concern that I have. The proposed action is claimed to be needed to support forecasted electric load growth. And I'll say that year in and year out, we have seen from LIPA consistent patterns of dramatic projections of future load requirements that are subsequently reduced. Particularly, we have seen now dramatic reductions that are driven by greater adoption of energy efficiency and alternative sources, such as rooftop solar, which balance Long Island's electric grid. And in fact, in the 2017, the Southampton Press reported that a house built at that time in 2017 would use less than half as much energy as similarly sized houses built just 10 years prior, and a quarter less than similarly sized houses in the 1980s. As reflected in Long Island's peak load forecast update, your document of March 2020, we've already seen drastic reduction from almost 7,500 megawatts projected in 2013 to less than 5,000 megawatts for what was 2020. And the new peak load forecast for 2030 is approximately 340 megawatts lower than that year's forecast. At the county level alone, energy efficiency projects are making drastic reductions in need. 7 cogeneration projects that are currently in planning or implementation for large county buildings are projected to reduce CO2 emissions by some 1,800 metric tons. We don't measure it in kilowatt hours, but certainly that. Is that a helicopter? That's another public hearing. Stay tuned. I am concerned, I have to say, I am concerned that as Fred pointed out, you know, we've seen this again and again and again. Careful, you know, presentations, secret analysis, and something that we know is going to have a dramatic impact on something that we love, something that is rare throughout New York State, and I would say throughout the entire region. Since 1968, we've been working and spending millions to preserve this, and it's not just for the salamander. I am concerned that I hear it already being talked about as a fait accompli. I do believe that as Fred, but I have also been in many you know, government projects where I have seen subtle and nuanced approaches to the specifics, whether it's, you know, the transmission and distribution that are your goals for this project, or whether it is the specific amount of the peak load that you're trying to meet, or whether it is the specific technology that you intend to use for accomplishing these goals. There are tweaks and changes and nuance that can be built into those programs if you don't think of it already as a fait accompli. What you are proposing here is going to have a dramatic, and I dare say unacceptable, impact to our natural environment, and it's got to be rethought. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Natalie Ryan. I'm the Long Island Community Partnership Manager for the Nature Conservancy. Okay, the Nature Conservancy wishes to express our concern regarding the proposed PSEG Bridgehampton to Buell underground cable project. The Long Pond Greenbelt has a long history of public support to protect it, as we can see tonight, and together with a multitude of partners, including Suffolk County and the town of Southampton, the Conservancy succeeded in preserving over 600 acres of this unique and important continuous chain of coastal plain ponds in an area of intense developmental pressure. The Long Pond Greenbelt is a unique expanse of interconnected coastal plain ponds, freshwater swamps, wetlands, fields, and woodlands, as Legislator Fleming pointed out. This supports one of the highest concentrations of rare species and natural communities anywhere in New York State, including at least 3 known breeding ponds of the New York State endangered tiger salamander. Additionally, the New York Natural Heritage Program has identified significant natural communities and records of 14 rare, threatened, and endangered species on or in the vicinity of the proposed project route. While much of the proposed work is subsurface, this project may impact the hydrology of this important freshwater system that many of these species are dependent upon. We urge every measure of caution to mitigate this potential impact. The Conservancy understands and appreciates the need for new electric transmission infrastructure as we transition to more renewable energy sources. However, ensuring that environmentally sensitive areas, such as the Long Pond Greenbelt, are protected must be considered in siting new transmission projects to meet this increasing demand, especially when other lesser damaging alternatives exist, such as local road right-of-ways. The Conservancy requests that the alternative routes be fully explored and exhausted before consideration is given to citing the PSEG preferred route within the vicinity of the environmentally sensitive Long Pond Greenbelt. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Bob DeLuca, and I serve as president of Group for the East End. On behalf of the group, I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments on the draft environmental impact statement for the Bridgehampton to Buell transmission line. For the record, the Group for the East End was founded in Bridgehampton in 1972 as a professionally staffed environmental advocacy. I'm on 4 minutes. As an environmental advocacy and education organization representing the conservation and community planning interests of several thousand member households, community organizations, and individuals from across the east end of Long Island. For my part, I've served as a conservation biologist, professor, and land use practitioner in this region for the last 40 years. I think I can probably save time by stipulating that everything which has been said I agree with, and I just want to drill down a little bit more on a couple of the specifics here. First and foremost, we would agree that if there was a workable and economically responsible strategy to redirect this proposal away from the Greenbelt, we would support that measure. We also know that there's a lot of considerations involved, and we're sort of in a position of looking at trying to get the least worst alternative here, which I understand is a problem for everybody. But nonetheless, to the extent that this project can be moved outside of the Greenbelt, that would be our first priority. Now, that being said, I've looked at all the alternatives, and I hope that I can narrow the focus here on a few of them. With respect to the northern underground route, although it does get you kind of outside the Greenbelt, one of the things that is evident in the impact statement is what you need to go through to get that through the village of Sag Harbor and the houses and residential areas that you would need to go through is probably next to impossible. So alternative 2, from our perspective, is probably not something that we could support, and I don't think it would work with your needs and timelines either. With respect to the southern underground route, that proposal, though it's also operating in a right-of-way, and clearly there could be some impacted residences, it does have an advantage over alternative 2 due to the less complicated route that it takes, fewer jurisdictional boundary issues, and its greater confinement to major roadways, which reduce the potential impacts on residential areas. That said, it's still 43% longer than the action that you want to do, but it is outside the Greenbelt, and we suggest that this alternative remain under consideration. With respect to the northern hybrid route, take a look at that proposal. The extensive replacement of poles and the installation of more intrusive poles in highly visible areas all along will create complications, and again, through the village, that I don't think most folks will find acceptable. I think there's a higher visual impact, and we don't support further consideration of alternative 4. With respect to the overhead route with LIPA easement, this is alternative 5, this one seems to kind of have the worst of all features if you take a look at it. And it's got 134 new steel poles. These are 65 feet above grade, 15 feet below grade, coupled with construction activities involving cranes and other equipment. And I would say that we would ask you to abandon further consideration of that alternative. But here's the thing. How does all of that stack up against what it is that you propose to do? And I think here is where the kind of narrowing really needs to take place. As a general statement, yeah, the route is shorter. It probably is less obtrusive to individual residences. You can make a case here for directional drilling. And it can be more cost-effective than what I've seen represented in the DEIS. But think about what we're talking about here, and if you didn't know it when you got here, you probably heard about the 50 years that have been spent trying to take care of this place, trying to protect it, try to make it a relic of the past natural history here that is disappearing. And so what I would say very bluntly is if you seek to do work in that area, LIPA, PSIG, whoever is in charge ultimately, needs to consider what it is that you're going through. Not that you can do it from an engineering standpoint, but that you're doing it to this community which has worked for 50 years to preserve this area. And one of the suggestions I would make is that you consider either an environmental benefit fund or an environmental mitigation fund, something to demonstrate respect and honor the tradition that took place to get the Greenbelt where it is. And allow that independent fund to offset potential impacts directly related to the project and future mitigation and management needs that the Greenbelt has. And I say that only because in trying to balance the equities here about everything that you have to look at, the big thing that I think is missing, and I maybe wouldn't expect it from folks that don't spend as much time here as we do, is the honor of that tradition of that Greenbelt means something to people here.
4 minutes.
I get it? Okay. And so I would ask you to really include that in your thoughts and in your comments when you come back to answer this, but ditch those other alternatives. Please consider this Environmental Benefit Fund, and I thank you very much for your time.
Now, can I extract this? Yes, I can. Okay, I'm just an ordinary citizen. My family's been here for over 100 years, and I don't think that it says anything except that we are committed to preserving as much of this area as we can. And this particular project, drilling horizontally, I do know something about it. I had a man come to gas. Well, I guess he was, I don't know whether it was drill. He came and said, he asked me if he could turn off my gas. And I said, turn off my gas? Why do you want to turn off my gas? He said, we're installing a gas line along Ocean Road in Bridgehampton. I said, well, I've been waiting for you to come because I could see all the yellow markings on the pavement. And, and I said, I don't see any digging going on. He said, oh, ma'am, we don't do it that way anymore. So I said, well, show me how you do it. So he took me down and showed horizontal drilling along the, just over the service area of the road, and I was amazed. But then and I guess every 500 feet or so they dug it down and connected the chain, and they dragged the pipe through, and I thought that was, as a previous science teacher, I thought that was pretty cool. But drilling horizontally underneath the Long Pond Greenbelt, a preserved nature area of ponds and woods, to install an electrical transmission cable is an attack on our environment. One thing drilling along Ocean Road, and the other thing is going through a protected, well, what's already been said, protected area is sort of crazy. In the appropriate place, horizontal drilling to install gas and water lines and other utilities is a useful technology, but not in an environmentally sensitive area. There is an alternative route, which there are alternative routes which are longer and more expensive, but we are paying the highest electrical rates in the country. And I think somehow you could service better with more positive outreach to the community. And then I had one last thought. Has there been a risk analysis done on this study of what would it cost if a mistake occurs and the Long Pond Greenbelt is irreversibly harmed? Has there been any kind of risk analysis done? Seems to me there's a big risk here.
We're just here to receive comments tonight, so
Okay,
any comments
there's a
are going to
question.
be formally responded to in the final environmental
Okay,
impact
that's great.
statement.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all I was saying. I'm a member of the Southampton Town Sustainability Committee and the Bridgehampton Civic Association, and I hope you will hear our appeal.
Thank you.
And just before you speak, just for the folks to be aware, we're going to ask that Aaron raise his hand when there's about 30 seconds left, just so you're aware of the time frame, because we do recognize that we do have a lot of people that wish to speak this evening, and we want to hear all of you.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Bornstein. I live in Sagaponack, and I spend a lot of time in the Greenbelt, and I'm an ex-board member of Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt. I probably don't do nearly as much work as all the people in this room do to preserve it, but the man and woman hours spent there, as well as the dollars that Fred Thiel, thank you, and Bridget Fleming and the Nature Conservancy have talked about in investing and protecting this area are immense. So they can all be much more eloquent than I ever could be about the environmental impact, about even the history of it, and what we have to lose here. So I'll just point to who has the most to lose here, and it's those two little boys in the back room. We're geezers, we'll be gone, and then it's theirs, and you can't clean up a habitat. What you said earlier about, we'll do reclamation, that doesn't happen. You can't restore a vernal pond. You can't fix what is liable to happen here. Even the planned disturbance is bad enough. Please reconsider. And I haven't had time to look at all the alternatives, so I'll make another statement later in writing. But to quote somebody that I like, please don't do it just because you can.
Hi, Steve Storch. I live in Watermill, and I've been living out here for 40-something years. And this is just a representation of how little respect you have for how hard people work out here for the money that they make and that went into the pay taxes that we use to pay for this. And, there's always an expression from Southampton, people from away. You're not from around here, and they always send people that have no stake in what we've created here to do damage. It's people cutting down trees to build houses and clearing lots and things like that. And and for this extra electricity, are you talking about serving the 1%? Because I don't see any of them here, speaking out against it or speaking up for it. They don't want to really show their face in connection to things like this, but they want to reap the benefits of what we have here. Buy a lot, build a house, and sell it for big profits on the backs of the people that, we all love it for the same reasons, but people that come and sell out and leave make out. And we stay here, and we're left with more and more burdens of traffic and big houses that have to be served by hundreds of people plugging up the roads, coming from away because they can't afford to live here. They got to come from 40, 50 miles away. Some people come from New York City and New Jersey to work here. And, it's just a misunderstanding of who we are and what this place is. You're talking about going in and digging into a place that has taken nature 15,000 years after the Ice Age to lay down and build, okay? If you can grok that 15,000 years ago, we were under a 2-mile thick sheet of ice here when it stopped. And all this is built up. And, I work in environmental remediation, organic farming. I work with a lot of different places and a lot of different people and a lot of different environments. And do you have any idea, what happens when you directional drill under a pond that's connected to the groundwater, and you, put this pipeline of wire through it? Is it going to make a leak and drain these ponds? You don't, so these are questions that you can't answer because you don't know. I yield back my time.
First of all, I can't judge whether the need, I think Bridget's comment about the need for electricity was very interesting, and I can't judge that. Let's hope that the extra electricity will go for electric cars and other substitutes for fossil fuel. But even so, my name is Kendorf, and I live on the Round Pond, which is at the northeast corner of the Long Pond Greenbelt. If you think of it as like Central Park, and the Greenbelt is just about the size of Central Park, We live at 110th Street and 5th Avenue. My spouse works for the Nature Conservancy, and I've been on the board of the Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt, and we've been intimately involved with this treasure for over 25 years. Now, to reemphasize, this is not just about salamanders. Just one example. The Greenbelt embraces a string of coastal plain ponds with their unique botany. Plants that might be underwater for 10 years and then come up and flower when the water goes down, the water level goes down. Really unusual species. These coastal plain ponds exist in only 3 places remaining in the United States: Cape Cod, the New Jersey Pine Barrens, and right here. That we would be considering the risk of damaging such a rare environment, to me, is appalling. I'd like to also point out that the PSEG information, I tried to read it to make sense of things, was both unconvincing and difficult to understand. And I'm not an idiot. So there were things that I think your presentation could have been a lot more easy to understand. I don't know where it goes underground. I don't know how it gets through the areas within the Greenbelt. The last thing I just want to say is that, thinking again of Central Park, can you imagine if we decided to destroy Central Park or put underground lines or cut through Central Park? People would be appalled. Well, this place to us is at least as valuable. It is really our Central Park. And I want you to think about that, how damaging it is. Most of us here in this room think you should go, I think maybe everyone here in this room thinks that you should go elsewhere. Try alternative 3. It makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Frank Colbetto. I'm the executive director of the South Fork Natural History Museum, just located south of the proposed area where you're going to dig transmission lines under the Long Pond Greenbelt. We do 300 interpretive educational natural programs a year to families and children of all ages. First and foremost, I just want to thank Day Dayton, Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt, for leading this charge and all the efforts that she's done over the years with her group. Just want to thank Day Dayton, president of the Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt, for all her efforts and her group's efforts, along with Assemblyman Fred Thiel, and Bridget Fleming, and Bob DeLuca, and all the environmentalists here on the South Fork who have worked so diligently over the years to protect this significant and ecologically sensitive habitat. My background is marine science, and I've been an environmentalist and a bay management specialist for the town of East Hampton for over a decade, and I've been the executive director at this wonderful nature education organization known as the South Fork Natural History Museum for 12 years. So we do surveys for the New York State DEC. We provide data about the ecological habitats here in the Long Pond Greenbelt for assessing the sensitivity of the environment. The eastern tiger salamander breeds in many ponds throughout the Long Pond Greenbelt. It utilizes 1,000 or more feet from its breeding ponds. I know I read something in an article that PSE&G was proposing to do this project 500 feet away from their vernal breeding ponds, but in reality, they utilize 1,000 feet around their breeding ponds. Snapping turtles, box turtles that utilize the habitat also travel thousands of feet to lay eggs in upland areas. And, you know, with all my experience taking people through the Greenbelt for interpretive programming, it is without a doubt the most rewarding place on the East End where I can educate people about how important it is to protect this natural resource. These animals have evolved here, this habitat, and the animals are glacial relics, like the gentleman a few speakers ago had said. It's taken thousands of years to evolve to have this particular habitat be as significant as it is, and I think, you know, we just need to protect it as best we can. So on behalf of the entire South Fork Natural History Society organization, I'm here to officially oppose the project to run any power lines through the Long Pond Greenbelt Preserve. One of the things also that I would like to hear about is the future, if this project does go through, of what electromagnetic field interference will do to underground habitat. I don't think people don't speak about that. And the herps, the herpetofauna, reptiles and amphibians of this particular preserve are not, they don't easily hear noise and see things, but they react to vibration and transmission cables and electricity, electromagnetic fields through a habitat like this. So I just feel that it's just best to hear other alternatives than run cables through this preserve. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Moore. I'm a property owner with my husband at 21 Merchants Path in Sagaponack, not far from the Haynes Path trailhead to the Long Pond Greenbelt, and a board member with the Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt. I only just moved out here full-time 2.5 years ago and discovered the Long Pond Greenbelt on walks with my dog, which offered a much-needed respite from the stress and loneliness of working remotely during 2020 and 2021. I'm here today to voice my opposition to PSEG's proposal to drill through the Greenbelt. From a simple search of the New York Department of State website, a coastal fish and wildlife assessment form indicates the Long Pond Greenbelt is an ecosystem rare in Suffolk County and provides important habitat for a wide variety of fish and wildlife species. The Long Pond Greenbelt site is included in the Southampton Greenbelt Important Bird Areas. The Long Pond Greenbelt is recognized by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a priority wetland complex under the Federal Emergency Wetlands Resources of 1986. The New York Natural Heritage Program, in conjunction with the Nature Conservancy, recognizes the Greater Long Pond Greenbelt complex, including the Long Pond Greenbelt, Slate Pond, Black Pond, Bridgehampton, and Little Poxago Pond as a priority site for biodiversity. And as we all know, the area proposed for drilling is a habitat to the eastern tiger salamander, which on the New York Department of Environmental Conservation website says that loss of habitat has been responsible for the extirpation of this species from heavily developed western Long Island. Recent surveys have identified about 90 breeding ponds in New York confined to Nassau County and Suffolk County. Its status at these remaining sites is tenuous because of pesticides and other contaminants, threat of development, and other land use patterns. Again, excerpts from the Wildlife and Coastal Forum. Any activity that would substantially degrade the water quality in the ponds, streams, and wetlands of the Long Pond Greenbelt would have significant impacts on the biological productivity of this area. All species of fish and wildlife would be adversely affected by water pollution, such as chemical contamination, oil spills, excessive turbidity or sedimentation, waste disposal, and airborne pollution. Significant changes in the water quality or hydrologic regime of the coastal plain ponds in the Long Pond Greenbelt would result in the loss of rare species and degradation of the ecological character and value of pond and pondshore communities. Elimination of open water or wetland areas through excavation or filling would result in a direct loss of valuable habitat area. The existing hydrology in the Long Pond Greenbelt wetlands should not be disturbed. The town of Southampton has recognized the importance of the Greenbelt as a high priority for acquisition. You read all of this, and to me, it's just common sense that we should not permit underground drilling through the Greenbelt. While there is information saying that HDD is the least disruptive form of drilling, it is not without risk. And here, even if the probability of unexpected occurrences could reasonably be assessed as low, the magnitude of the possible impact is just too great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello to everybody. I would like to introduce myself, and it's really good to meet you as my neighbors and community. Thank you very much for this lecture. I just get informed about this reunion, and I feel the call to come in here and speak about the representation of the groups I have. Here, my name is Lorena Patino, and I'm from Mexico, but I work with 4 different schools in Europe and Africa, and many of the West Coast and East Coast. In this time, I have been here working in different projects of education with Ross School and another farms, and also in Belport, educating the campers that are the Farmers Workers Association. And I feel like you don't understand that the calling of great spirit. And I'm in here because I found this long pond greenbelt for the call of great spirit, that is the deer. For me, it's like, this is a call of Mother Nature, to me, to show this globally as a piece of the rarest places in the world, that for you can look like a swamp or like a trail that is abandoned, but for nature, this is example of that Dubai, Thailand, Philippines, the most incredible architectures in the world are trying to generate, are trying to copy, to create in the luxurious village. I work in Greece, I work also in Poland, in Ukraine, and it's not fair that you don't understand that you are in New York, and we are not going to allow that you are using electricity for the wealthy house. I have a solution for you. Sustain the solar. Educate. You want to do an upgrade, you start the conversation that you want to show this to your customers. We have customers in education here. We are in the most rare place in the world that people is creating community with Japan, with Taiwan, with people from really high level in education. And we are also trying that they are here with us. Thank you. Thank you. And you can follow the project, Our Village. I also work with Chine Cognition, and we are trying to create a community, and you have the option to upgrade yourself, and then obviously your company. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, this is, I think, better. Okay, my name's Tom Lushchuk, and my wife and I have been year-round residents for 10 years plus, and we were drawn here from New York because of its natural beauty. And what you've heard so far is a community saying, we are concerned. We don't want to risk it. Now, there is, in addition to the natural beauty, there's the Lakota saying, Mini Wachoni, life. Water is life. And clearly, the natural world out here is partially fed by the ponds that are at risk. Now, I've heard the argument that, well, you're just drilling through clay and it's horizontal, you know, everything will be fine. But there is a contemporary warning here. We heard this argument from the oil industry when they said, we have this new technique, it's called fracking. Okay. Not to say that you're going to be forcing water into the ground, but the fact of the matter is that this is a sensitive area. And if it's lost because of this technology, it really can't be replaced. And what I would like basically to say is that, how many people have you heard speak already? How many have said, hey, this is a great idea? Let's go ahead. Now, there may be one or two later on, I don't know, I can't predict that, but the overwhelming opinion of those of us who took time out of our day to come here, the overwhelming opinion is, this is not a good idea, drilling through. And what I would like to suggest is take another look at going along established roadways. Okay, so it'll cost $40 million more. Okay, we're already paying the highest rates, you know, anywhere, and it's not as if, you know, it's not as if you're a small company and $40 million is half your income. You know, you can do it. And I think it would be a gross disservice to our community if you should proceed as is and drill underneath Long Pond Greenbelt. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Day Dayton from Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt. We're representing more than 400 members. The Long Pond Greenbelt, as you've heard, is irreplaceable. And your statements that you can fix anything that goes wrong, it's not possible. First, to the west of the turnpike, you're going to be affecting the Great Swamp. This is the hydrological area of the Long Pond Greenbelt. This feeds the Long Pond Greenbelt. Your plan is to clear nearly an acre of land and stage this machine that will shoot a drill down the easement that has a vernal pond right on the easement. You'll be shooting under that, and then between Long Pond and Deer Drink and Crooked Pond, which has an active running stream. And again, they are coastal plain ponds. Then your plan is to continue on and put in a big vault to make a connection from the other side of Widow Gavitt's Road. That will pass right through the wetlands of Long Pond Greenbelt, of the actual Long Pond of the Greenbelt. There is no way that you could repair anything that goes wrong with this, and you cannot guarantee that something will not go wrong. So please consider alternate number 3. Fred Thiel has helped in the past when these issues come up on Scuttle Hole Road. Giant towers were going to be put in, and he's worked out something that worked out that they could put it underground. We all paid for it. We were all happy to pay for it. And I hope actually that Fred could explain how this could be done to pay the extra amount of money to save our Long Pond Greenbelt. Thank you.
First, I wasn't going to give my real name so they didn't turn off my power. Thank you. It is wonderful to be here in community with everybody here. I'm born and raised in Suffolk. Live in Sag Harbor with my family. I'm here for my 2 daughters, Isabel and Rosie, who love the Greenbelt very much. I want to thank our political leaders for standing up, our everyday citizens, and our environmental leaders, and Day, who's the legend of this group. Thank you for everything you do. So I run a communications company. I've been in these rooms, I've looked at this table, and we all know. We see the looks on your faces. We know you talked about this as a done deal. We know. You guys didn't even introduce yourself to the room. You don't care. This is our community. You don't live here. We don't want this thing. We don't want this built like this. And we're gonna fight you. And we're gonna continue to organize. You have to put out more chairs. You're gonna have to get some more. We're not gonna stop. We're not gonna stop. This place is too important. This place is too important to our community. And I think you'll find that this is just the beginning of how we're gonna push back and come together and fight this. So I beg of you, prove me wrong. Prove me that you are listening. Prove to this room and our community. I wish you guys spent a little more time on solar power. You know, I wish I could put more solar on my roof, but I'm told you guys kept me from doing that. I mean, come on, guys. So please, prove us wrong, work with us, help protect this really important place. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name's Ann Welker. I'm a Southampton Town trustee. I'd like to thank not only PSEG for being here this evening and for granting us the opportunity to speak. As you've heard, our community is speaking loudly. I'd also like to thank Day Dayton and the Friends of Long Pond Greenbelt. 25 years of environmental advocacy. That's a long record, and it would be a shame to ruin it with this proposed project. It's interesting that as a connector for the wind farm to Western power sources, there is the potential here to have things go wrong. And I don't really like this word, but the optics of that for PSE&G, I hope that you're considering that. I took a moment, so the town trustees, Southampton town trustees, were created by a land grant from the King of England back in 1686. And as part of that doctrine, the bottomlands of freshwater bodies and streams are under the custody, care, and control of the town trustees. So in looking at the water and the issues with the coastal ponds and the potential for problematic situations, I especially looked at Appendix 1. The title of Appendix 1 being the Frack Out Contingency Plan. And there are many concerning issues to me when I'm looking at this contingency plan. And I'm just wanting to make sure that as you're going through and making statements such as the primary environmental impact potentially associated with HDD is the inadvertent release of drilling fluids or mud, the water bentonite mixture, to the surface during construction, sometimes known as frack out. In reading further to discover what frack out is and what the potential could be for that to these fragile, as you've heard many times tonight, very environmentally sensitive coastal plain ponds and the critters and plants that live in them, there's a great danger here. So I strongly urge you to, on the part of this community, and you can hear this is a passionate community, and we are just a small snapshot representing others who could not be here this evening. But I strongly urge you, on behalf of the Southampton Town Trustees and many others in this community, to consider alternative number 3, the Southern Underground route. Thank you.
My name is Kate Ermilio, and as someone said earlier, I come from away. And 22 years ago, we purchased a place here in Sag Harbor, and we've become acquainted with what everyone loves about this place. And this whole thing reminds me of a story. the place we come from away from is a place called Willistown. And I remember getting a phone call. We lived outside of Philadelphia in an agricultural area. It was just beautiful, hard to leave, but this place allured us here. And one of the farmers allowed Philadelphia Suburban Water Company to come in and drill test wells. Well, all of a sudden, folks' ponds were getting lower, and the water table was changing, and all kinds of things going on. And I worked in the neighborhood. I worked for a place called SmithKline Animal Health Products. I was a physiologist there and designed artificial animal models. And I didn't know a lot about the ecology, but I knew we did environmental assessments and all kinds of things when we sent stuff to the Center for Veterinary Medicine and the FDA. So I said I'd take a look at it, and basically what they were doing, these test wells were turning into profit centers where they were sending the water elsewhere. And, you know, we went to PSC&G, or not PSC&G, excuse me. We went to Philadelphia Suburban Water, and they looked at me and they said, oh yeah, well, we tell you what, Katie, if you got the money, we got the time. And I said, okay. So we decided that we'd take the time to reach out to their shareholders. And we found that a lot of their shareholders were stakeholders, and they cared. They were away from where we lived, but they did care. And Philadelphia Suburban Water, the burden of proof was changed so that they had to prove that they weren't causing the environmental damage. And Willistown Conservation Trust was born, and it's an absolutely fabulous, pristine area because some of the from-away shareholders cared.
Good evening, and I'm glad you're here to listen today. I'm a Waynescott resident. I'm not going to speak about any of the scientific elements of this project that other neighbors, residents have spoken about, but I am going to speak about 4 points which I think are a sense of the obvious and common sense. The first one being that the need for this additional cable project is not proven. Not from your presentation, not from what's been said. I've sat at your side of the table. My life has been in marketing. So I've created those presentations. I've made the selling points. You have not made your selling point. Certainly not with what we've seen here tonight. Number two, the need for, any kind of ground disturbance, no matter how minimal, is still going to be a ground disturbance. And below ground disturbance will have an impact. We may not see it on the surface right away, but it's impossible to disturb the land underneath, especially bodies of water, and not anticipate that this is going to have very serious impact and will somewhat, in some form, collapse. And hopefully it's not going to collapse on us. My third point, and this is very important, because we've had any number of corporations come into the area of Suffolk and the area east of the canal, wanting to do improvement projects for us, not the least of which is the wind project, but that's for another meeting. The mitigation which is offered is not a viable option because there is no way that we will know exactly what it's going to cost. And I don't want you to put more money than you need to for a mitigation factor, but I also don't want you to put any less money than would be necessary. So I don't think it's even a consideration that you're offering mitigation, because that will not be viable. Fourth, the best mitigation is to not disturb the environment. This is key. This cable system is not necessary. So with those 4 points, I end with, I do not support this project.
My name is Carolyn Logan Gluck. My name is Carolyn Logan Gluck. I live in Wainscott. And I just wanted to comment briefly because I've spent, since January of this year, observing a company contracted by PSEG installing conduits for an electrical cable. And I've watched vaults be installed, and I've watched trees been taken down along the Long Island Railroad in order to accommodate what was needed for transportation to continue the cable to the Cove Hollow substation. To think that work of this nature would be conducted through the Long Pond Greenbelt and along the, what you claim to be the right-of-way where the overhead power line is disturbing to me, because even if it is a right-of-way, even if there already is established infrastructure going through part of the route that you've outlined, it still will be immensely disturbing to the natural ecology that's there today. Like my predecessor here at the mic, Jose, I too question the need and validity of this project. But if in fact that's not enough to stop it, which I doubt it is, I do hope that you would go to the expense of installing the cable along the Montauk Highway, where it will be least disturbing to our ecology. Thank you.
We will now be working with our Zoom participants. One moment, please. We are currently waiting for our Zoom participants to raise their hand to speak. And one is raising.
Can we also just adjust the volume for the Zoom participants, please, just so the reporter can hear and adequately record the comments?
One moment, please. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Can you hear me all right?
Please try that again.
My name is Jess Powers.
You are live.
Okay, great. Thank you to everyone who's there in person. I wasn't able to be there due to an injury, and otherwise I definitely would. I live in the house that my great-grandfather bought in Noyak in the 60s. I'm a member of the Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt and the South Fork Natural History Museum. And in my daily work life, I see the downstream effects of short-sighted decisions like this on the environment and on communities across the country. There is a viable alternative, and I ask that you go with option number 3. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Bill, do we have any other Zoom participants?
We are currently waiting for additional Zoom participants.
Perhaps while we're waiting, I could speak in between. I signed up earlier, but I was on, my paper I wasn't on the right paper apparently. Okay, just to take up the dead time. Hi,
One second,
Oh,
please. Could the Zoom participant please state their name?
Nick Martin.
And you are live.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for this effort. And as a person who lives in the Long Pond Greenbelt and raising a family of 5 here, someone who's involved in construction and architecture, I believe that the public may deserve to see additional proposals that would allow for variable options that do not disturb the Long Pond Greenbelt, and also access to additional environmental impact statements that show the potential issues and ways that this kind of work may disturb our fragile ecosystem. It's the very reason why we live here and the very reason why we are all so concerned with this project. And I believe that we each deserve a sense of different ways of getting to the same means. Thank you for your efforts.
We currently have no other Zoom participants at this point who wish to talk. We will, I've been informed that we have, oh wait, we have one more Zoom participant who wants to talk? All right, 1 second please. Could the new Zoom participant please unmute and start their video, please?
Unmute and start the video, he said.
Could you please state your name?
My name is Jay Schneider.
You are live.
You're live. Okay. I have been a resident of the Greenbelt for 25 years. I have really not much to add to what's been said before. I'd like you to take a look. This is Lily Pond. This is the Greenbelt. This is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Leave it alone. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kelly Dodds. I'm a resident of Sag Harbor, Noyak, and my family's here with me, Jackson, Rowan, and Ellis, our boys. I'm a member, we're all members of Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt, the 4 of us. Rowan actually became a member when he was 7 weeks old. That was his first trek, some of you might remember. So yeah, we spend a lot of time in the Greenbelt. And I'm not just here to represent my family, but I'm here to represent the many families of Sag Harbor and the East End that come together as a community to use and share and just, you know, take a stroll. We're out there and we see our friends, our neighbors, plenty of dogs and happy people. But we come together probably, I think there's a hike that's planned maybe even once a week, if not more, between SOFO, the South Fork Natural History Museum, and the Greenbelt, Friends of the Long Pond Greenbelt, and Day Dayton. We go to every year the Walk It Off walk the day after Thanksgiving. It's a family tradition, 30 years. Whoop, whoop. So yeah, I'm taking it light, but the point that I want to make is that it's not, yes, of course it's about the Greenbelt, and it's about all of the beings, right, the living creatures that are there, but it's about the community, it's about the people, us, you know, this is our community, we're representing a sliver of it. You know, there's hundreds of kids that come out and use the Greenbelt, and that's our place where we gather, and the thought of having it be disturbed in any way, it does feel appalling. Someone else said that before, and you know, I noticed one of your options is do nothing, you know, so that's an option too. But you know, to talk about it, you know, like it's happening, or to say, I heard you say earlier, you know, you'll get our follow-up environmental impact statement or whatever it is. Like, we're humans here talking to you. I'm not like giving you 30 pieces of paper. I'd like you to come and engage with us in conversation. Come take a hike with us on the Greenbelt, see what it's all about. You know, I appreciate that you've done the work here, and I've read it, and you know, I still don't see how the Greenbelt is a viable option. But yeah, the kids can't really get up here and speak. You guys want to say anything? No, okay. All right, but so I'm saying it for them, you know, for our kids. Please find another way to accomplish what you need.
Are there any other speakers? Oh, yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Robin Foster, and I actually have been blessed to live in the community for 56 years. I actually grew up on Sag Pond, an eighth of a mile from the beach, and now I live for over 30 years. I live 4 miles north on Crooked Pond. So my family has been a part of the community for over 100 years. And we have worked tireless as a farm family to preserve those pristine, amazing acres so that it will be here forever and ever. This was not an expense that somebody just came along and said, well, we're just gonna pay you to stay on this property. We had to fight to keep it. My father was actually instrumental in gathering farmers to fight the Shoreham project for LIPA, against LIPA. Now, I see the actual change in the aquifer on Crooked Pond because I am an aware human being. I don't have to be a scientist, but I see the immense amount of construction, and I've seen ponds dry up, including Crooked Pond. We've had some issues there, and I think it's because there has been cement that has actually been put in everyone's backyard, and that water has to go somewhere. And that's where it's going. And I just feel like if you are not sensitive and don't care, this will certainly go away. And I invite you to see any disturbance, you know, excuse me, you talk about the money it's gonna cost if you do a separate, you know, number 3. Well, I'll tell you something. If there is a mistake, it will be absolutely priceless. You won't be able to spend enough money to fix what you've ruined. So spend the extra money, and please leave the Greenbelt alone, because it is just the most precious thing that we have right now. Thank you. Oh, sure. Yep. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Leslie Schultz. I actually live diagonally across the street from Robin. I came to listen tonight, and as I sat and I listened to everybody's comments, it just occurred to me that this is just a nuts situation. This is just absurd that we are even talking about this kind of work. So I live across the street from Crooked Pond. And I have it, when the property was first built in the 1950s, the road was sand and there was a clear view from what is now my house to the pond. It was a beach. Now it's really grown up and it's, beautiful, green, lush, but it also blocks our view. So we called Robin and said, Robin, what do you think if we do a little trimming? And she said, no, 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 no. That's habitat. It's against the law. And we learned from that. And then I see every couple of years PSE&G come along Crooked Pond and clear some of the overgrowth now so it doesn't interfere with the electrical lines, the above ground electrical lines. And your guys women and guys, so carefully trim those trees because it's habitat. Because you can't, as a legal matter, disturb the habitat of this land that has been so carefully preserved. So the idea now that you are going to drill horizontally, vertically, whatever you're going to do, is just one of those absurdities of life. You can't do it. The world is already on fire, we know that, and this is preserved land. Thank you.
It looks like there are no additional speakers, and if so, we're going to close the public hearing. I'd like to thank you all for coming and for expressing yourself. Thank you.